You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. Peace in the territory of Donbas, temporarily uncontrolled by Ukraine, will come only after Russia recognizes itself as a part of a conflict. This was stated by the permanent representative of Ukraine to the United Nations, SERHII, during the debates at the UN General Assembly. Russia, in turn, considers itself a mediator. At the same time, it constantly blocks the implementation of the Minsk agreements and the work of the trilateral contact group. The position of Ukraine is also supported by the United States.
Russia has attempted to block any meaningful progress in diplomatic negotiations, while it simultaneously arms, trains, funds, and leads its proxy forces and supports the self-proclaimed authorities on the ground. But we are also here today because, as we have heard, Ukraine has widespread support among member states that honor and respect the implicit bedrock prohibition in the UN Charter that no country can change the borders of another by force.
The Donbas is becoming a potential source of technogenic and environmental danger. SERHII stated this. The situation is aggravated by the fact that illegal armed groups do not allow international observers to enter the territories uncontrolled by Ukraine.
In 2018, the occupation authorities stopped pumping water from the Unkom mine where the Soviet government carried out a nuclear explosion. As a result, radiation is already contaminating the surface and groundwaters. We therefore call on an active involvement of the UN to conduct assessment of the environmental damages in the temporarily occupied territories of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions.
Ukraine has fulfilled another condition for unblocking the operation of the checkpoint Zolote and Shchastia near the contact line in Donbas. Starting February 24th, buses are ready to run across the contact line, the Ukrainian delegation to the trilateral contact group on resolving the situation in Donbas reports. The other side keeps the checkpoints at the uncontrolled territories closed. The new checkpoints in Luhansk region have been operating since last autumn. There are service centers and bank branches there. However, illegal armed groups do not let people through.
The Russian side has again refused to open the checkpoints on its part. To be more precise, the opportunity for our citizens to leave the temporarily occupied territories and receive administrative services, pensions and social benefits is blocked since November 10th. We are waiting for appropriate assessment of this decision from partner states and international humanitarian organizations.
Sentence to the Odesa activists caused protests in several Ukrainian cities. Nevertheless, the position of the prosecution in this case is justified, and the protests can be regarded as pressure on the court. This is how head of the Odesa Regional Prosecutor's Office, Serhii commented on the street actions that began after the sentencing of the activist Serhii STERNENKO. They believe that the case was considered in court in compliance with the procedures and the defendant could exercise this right to defense. In addition, the prosecutor's office provided their evidence.
Protocol of the scene inspection, the protocols of the investigative experiment, the protocols of identification of both persons and objects, the traffic of telephone connection which confirm the communication and movement of persons involved in this criminal proceeding, other particular evidences. There are conclusions of forensic and ballistic examinations, testimony of the victims and other evidence, as together they were all investigated by the court and the court assessed them in terms of reliability, admissibility, sufficiency and relevance to this criminal proceeding.
Odesa activist Serhii STERNENKO was sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in prison the day before. He was accused of the assault, using violence, illegal carrying of weapons and kidnapping. Under the last article, the statute of limitations has already expired and no punishment has been assigned. Those who disagreed with the verdict gathered in the center of Kyiv yesterday. The action caused several clashes in which 27 police officers and soldiers of the National Guard were injured. 2 regions becoming red and 7 more orange. The rest are yellow. Starting February 24th, Ukraine will again live according to the rules of an adaptive quarantine. My colleagues will tell you more.
Bukovina and Prekarpatia are included in the list of regions with the worst COVID-19 incidents. Over the past day, the largest number of infected people has been recorded there. More than 400 cases in Chernivtsi and more than 700 new cases in Ivano-Frankivsk regions. These two areas fell into the red quarantine zone. There, school children are transferred to distance learning. By the decision of Commission, all institutions are transferred to a distance form of learning, except educational institutions. This applies to after-school groups and out-school educational work. The Regional Commission also restricted work of all public catering institutions. Starting February 26, transportation of passengers by railroad and air transport will be prohibited in the Ivano-Frankivsk region. Checkpoints have already been set up on the roads. All's fine, we react normally. We had to react earlier, but better late than never. Now the situation in the region is critical. This decision could be effective. Restaurants, bars and cafes are closed in ski resorts. Guests are required to keep social distance on slopes, lifts and hotels. To relieve the hospitals overcrowded with patients, a mobile emergency hospital was deployed on the territory of the Bohorodichany Central District Hospital. To date, we have developed 140 beds. I think by the end of the week we will be completely repurposed for a mono hospital. Another 7 regions, namely Vinnytsia, Donetsk, Zhytomyr, Transcarpathia and Zaporizhia, Luhansk and Ternopil, are put into the orange zone. Here on the territory of the region we register 40-50 COVID cases daily. If you look at the period of the lockdown, for 14 days before January 24, when the lockdown ended, we had 1459 cases, but over the past fortnight we have 495 cases. All other areas fell into the yellow zone. To prevent outbreaks of the disease in Dnipro, the State Consumer Rights Protection Service conducted raids in shops, public transport, service sector and educational institutions. Violations were in every 6th place.
The sanitizers for visitors are not always present. Besides, the workers often do not undergo temperature screening. It's the violation of the work access procedure. Disinfection of surfaces is not often conducted as well.
The quarantine zoning will be reviewed every 14 days. The adaptive quarantine will be enforced till April 30. Reported by Roman Smolar, Anastasia Lisova, Arina Kantonistova, Natalia Husak, Anastasia Volkova, UATV News.
Vaccination against coronavirus starts in Ukraine. This was announced by the Minister of Health, Maxim Stepanov. The day before, 500,000 doses of Covishield drug, which is produced under the Oxford-AstraZeneca license, were delivered to the country from India. According to the minister, at 7 a.m. the delivery of vaccines to the region started. Meanwhile, the number of new cases of COVID-19 in Ukraine is 5,850.
We have to carry out the first stage of vaccination in a short time. We do not have time and right for any delays. Doctors and other healthcare workers should receive maximum protection. We received a reliable vaccine by a world-renowned manufacturer from the British-Swedish company AstraZeneca, the developer of this vaccine.
Swedish princess, wife of the great Kyiv Prince Yaroslav the Wise, mother of 9 children, diplomat and healer. All this goes about Ingigerd-Irene. 970 years ago, she was buried in the sarcophagus of St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv. Among her descendants are even the living contenders for the British crown. Our correspondents will tell you more.
Primate of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine held a service in the Sophia Cathedral near the sarcophagus in which Yaroslav the Wise and his wife Ingigerd or Princess Irene were buried. We have deep historical roots of millennia. Our Ukrainian state is already in the European space. We do not return to Europe, but we have been there for our 1,000 years. Ambassador of Sweden to Ukraine Tobias Tiberg spoke about the common European past and future of Ukraine and Sweden.
Yaroslav and Ingigerd initiated the building of the great cathedral and monastery of St. Sophia of Kyiv. This is one of the earliest and arguably the most important manifestation of the Ukrainian state. Today, supporting Ukraine in that ongoing process of state building that Yaroslav and Ingigerd contributed so importantly to 1,000 years ago remains one of Sweden's most important objectives in our relations with Ukraine.
One of the main goals of Ukrainian scholars is to dispel the myth of the identification of Princess Ingigerd with Saint Anna of Novgorod, invented by Russian historians.
She was called the Princess of Novgorod, associated with the reign of Yaroslav. But when she married him, he was already the Prince of Kyiv. She lived, worked, founded monasteries and was buried in Kyiv.
The youngest descendant of Ingigerd and Yaroslav in the 31st generation is the 8th great-grandson of Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain, son of Prince Harry, Archie Harrison, Mountbatten, Windsor. Reported by Roman Smoler, Olena Diduch, Maxim Hradopek, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.